Hi, this is Josh Garrett from jgarrett.info and Subspec Music. So I'm just going to show you a quick little trick today for using drum racks to route MIDI into third-party drum machine plugins. Now you might wonder why would we want to do that? Okay, so what I have here is I've got a Drumazon, which is a 909 emulator from D16, and you can see on my push here that it's in keyboard mode, and it's showing chromatic right now, so that I have all my notes basically. Right. So there's my ride. There's my crash. Right. Okay. So all the typical 909 sounds, but they're spread across the keyboard. Now, a lot of the time when you're doing sort of groove sequencing, you want to use something that's really more dedicated to really rhythm composition and working with drums. The keyboard in its current mode is really intended for like melodic and harmonic composition. And so, you know, if you're used to using like a machine or an MPC, you know that that's very intuitive to work with like 16 pads and step sequencing and stuff for, I guess, rhythm composition. Now, the push has a mode for that, but it only switches into that when it detects that there's a drum rack in the track that is selected. So we can do that. There's a couple ways to do it. One would be that we would put a drum rack in, and we would just put an instance of Drumazon on each of the pads with the sound that we wanted it to use. And I'll show that method in another video. But in this case, we want to do something simpler because maybe we just want to have one Drumazon present instead of one for each pad. So it would actually have 16 instances of Drumazon if you were to put it in one per pad that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a MIDI track. So I can either right click and say insert MIDI track, or I could do Command Shift T. So here's my MIDI track. Nothing in it right now. I'm going to go to my devices, select drums, and I'm going to take drum rack and drop a blank drum rack in there. Okay, so now you can see that the push has changed. It's no longer showing a like a melodic or harmonic keyboard. I now have the pads down here, and I can move through them. And as I move through them on the push here, you can see that they're changing to show different sets of pads on the drum rack here. Okay, and so if I hit there's when I C1, my C sharp 1, my D sharp, etc. Okay, so you can see it's responding to hitting the pads, and the MIDI's coming in. Now, there's nothing in the pads right now, and we don't really need anything in the pads. What we want to do is just send the MIDI from here into one Drumazon. So we can do that. I'm just going to disable the devices, clean up my UI a little bit. I'm going to select Drumazon just so we can see, you know, as stuff comes in. Now it's moved back into a keyboard mode with my Drumazon here. And so we can see that, you know, there's the sounds again. If I go back to drum rack, you know, nothing there. So I'm just going to select track up here so I can just switch back and forth really easily. Okay, I'm going to turn on I/O so I can see my inputs and my outputs. On the Drumazon, it says MIDI from all ins. Okay, so basically that's looking for devices. But I'm going to tell it to watch to drum rack. Okay, and then I'm going to set it for input. Now, when I send MIDI into this drum rack, the Drumazon will pick it up. Okay, so you can see it's in drum mode here. I have drum rack selected. So there's my various sounds. Okay, so I could actually record in here too. So I'm just going to come in here and tell it that I want to record. And I'm just going to do one 4 beat. So here we go. Okay. So you can see that here's my step sequencer. I'm going to select my kick drum, and then now I'm using the step sequencer on track 2 to sequence my instrument that's on track 1. So again, I can use these pads just as I would with any drum rack. It just happens to be that I'm sending this out to another track. So there's a method for doing groove sequencing with step sequencer and the pads with a third-party drum machine. Thanks for watching.